Here's a guy who has a lot of weird things to say about evolution.
The way that the human mind is wired is we're trying to always figure things out. We always question things, and so we need hard logistical answers. So I want to touch the topic of evolution, which is something that's taught at a very early age, and especially in Western societies and pretty much maybe all over the world at this point. Since like 6th to 7th to 8th grade, I was learning about evolution in my charter school. And so with everything we see today, dinosaur bones, historical findings, caves, all of these things, the way that the dirt builds up over time and we're able to tell how old the soil is, and carbon dating, all these technologies and research and theories pop up, right? The Big Bang Theory.
Yes. Gee, it's almost like there's an overwhelming preponderance of evidence.
Is it wrong as a Christian to believe in evolution? Because before you answer, this is the way that I process it. I refused to believe in evolution when I was a kid. Refused, absolutely. Because I heard people talking about it. And so I automatically rejected it because of the way that my parents brought me up and what was said in the churches. So I was very closed-minded. Then with all these evidences...
You can always tell when someone is a creationist when they use the word evidences
being presented, I thought, you know what, maybe, what if God actuated the process of evolution to give our human minds, because he knew one day we're going to try to figure out where we came from, how we came from. He gave us something for the non-believers to grasp onto, because what happens if you don't believe in God? You said it earlier, you believe in something else. So some people make it government, some people make it theory, some people make it mathematics or another person or idols. Some people make it evolution. So what is your stance on evolution? Does my theory about God actuating evolution, is that something that's possible, or is that just completely off? I'm wrong. Tell me to my face. I'd love to hear it.
The old Earth creationists try to pivot from a view that has been thoroughly falsified to one that's altogether non-falsifiable. What if God made everything supernaturally, but he did it in a way that looks indistinguishable from nature? How would you go about demonstrating that exactly?
First of all, evolution comes from someone who was a member of the Round Table.
What can you tell that to everybody?
Someone, without going into too much details, those who know what the Round Table is and where it came from, they will see someone who was a non-believer in God, an atheist who was deliberately trying their hardest to brainwash people and take humanity away from the concept of this divine God who is the reason for the existence of this universe and life.
Citation needed. Where do you get the idea that Darwin set out to trick people into thinking God doesn't exist? And what is this round table nonsense? What the hell is that? Were the Illuminati in on it too? Was Darwin a reptilian?
In general. So that's one. Secondly, let's say everything came into existence because something exploded over 13 billion years ago. I just wonder who was present 13 billion years ago. Was it that scientist or his uncle or his grandpa?
The old you don't know because you weren't there argument. I guess we have to throw out all forensic science, because if someone wasn't a direct eyewitness to the crime, I guess we have no case. No amount of physical evidence could possibly be as strong as what someone said in an old book. Ken Ham used to make this argument all the time too. Imagine how much evidence has to be disregarded if we ignore physical clues.
Oh my God! What happened?
Excuse me, sir. Please stay back.
My name is Ken Spam. This is my house. It's okay. Mr. Spam, we think a drunk driver probably drove into your house. But that's just a theory at the moment. Oh, dear Lord! Were there any witnesses?
Unfortunately, no.
Well, then how do you know what happened? Well, Mr. Spam, if you'll follow me, these tire tracks match a Firepone Widowmaker F32Q all-season tire. 4 of which are attached to this 1995 Toyota Corolla, which is registered to a Mr. Ned Haggard.
A dozen bottles of liquid meth beer were found in the vehicle.
Our database matched the fingerprints on the bottles to a Mr. Ned Haggard. We found several hundred more prints throughout the house, also belonging to a Mr. Ned Haggard.
I take it Ned Haggard doesn't live here?
No. Moving on. There's a trail of blood that leads to the refrigerator. The DNA analysis of the blood matched perfectly with a Mr. Ned Haggard.
Bridge appears to be raided. Snagged some more DNA from the vomit, matching Mr. Ned Haggard's DNA profile.
Also, the guy who allegedly wrote Genesis wasn't there. Christians and Jews typically claim that Moses wrote the book of Genesis, but he wasn't around when the universe was created either. Also, it's unlikely that Moses wrote any of the Old Testament because it's written in Hebrew, and Dan McClellan pointed out that Hebrew didn't even exist when Moses supposedly existed.
In the scientific field, if it's a theory, I'm not obligated to accept it and believe in it, therefore don't force it on me.
Who's forcing you to believe anything? How would that even work? How do you force someone to believe something that they don't naturally find convincing? And in science, a theory is not just a guess, it's an idea that has been corroborated by an overwhelming preponderance of evidence.
It's a theory. So even the one who wrote it, he said, I think it's this. Well, you think, I don't have to accept it.
Right.
So a theory is a theory. Leave it to yourself. Don't teach it at university levels.
Why not? I know you don't understand that theories are consistently corroborated by evidence, but what would be the problem with teaching untested hypotheses and conjectures? As long as you explain that they're untested, what harm does it do? If you teach the hypotheses, a student may someday think of a way to test it. In math, conjectures are taught all the time, and sometimes people find ways to prove them.
And don't brainwash all these beautiful young men and women and take them away from God.
Hey, I don't go to the theology department and accuse the professors of brainwashing people with the Bible fanfics they write over there.
How dare you do this? But again, the educational system is infiltrated. So as the religious sector, so as the entertainment, and so on.
I suspect everyone this guy disagrees with has been brainwashed by infiltrators.
Now, if we assume that all this perfect and complex universe came into this because something exploded?
Everything exploded and is still exploding. The Big Bang was the earliest moment of the expansion of the universe that's still occurring. The idea is not intended as an explanation for why the universe exists.
Then let me put it to you this way, my dear friend, whoever you are. And I'll say, you're my friend, because I mean it.
Oh, thanks, good buddy.
If I say to you as an intellectual individual that the Oxford Dictionary came into this perfection and complexity because something exploded in the printing press, would you accept that? You'll say that is absurd.
What would you expect the consequence of the Big Bang to look like? Don't you think that literally everything was designed either by God or humans? If that's the case, what would something not designed look like? Even the results of explosions would be something that God planned out, would they not? So even scattered debris would not be an example of something that lacks design in your worldview. Also, it's not like the immediate moments after the Big Bang were full of galaxies and nervous systems. There was a much more orderly process that caused those to congeal into the forms we see today.
It's impossible. The moment you think of the Oxford Dictionary, immediately you think of a brain behind it that put it together.
Again, given that you think a mind put literally everything together, regardless of how much or how little complexity and order it has, what exactly would you expect something that is not made by a mind to look like?
An intelligent being that put this dictionary together. If the Oxford Dictionary did not come into existence unless there was a brain behind it, how much more this complex universe? So you're telling me the Oxford Dictionary cannot exist without a brain, but the universe existed without a creator.
If something as intelligent as a god can exist without a creator, why can't a universe?
That is impossible. Logically speaking, it is absolutely illogic. Doesn't make any sense. So let me tell you, even though I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to be one, I'm a little poor, a believer in Jesus Christ. I walk through His grave by His grace, and I ask Him for His mercy. But let me say one thing about the human DNA. Just one thing about the human being. The human DNA is made out of 3.1 billion bits of information. 3.1 billion bits of information.
Information is just non-randomness. You can find lots of information in lots of different things that were not designed.
If I were to convert that into words and write those words on an A4 sized paper, 500 words per page, it would take me 600,000 pages to write one person's DNA. You bring the entire encyclopedias of the world together, they will get nowhere near the intelligence in your DNA, my dear friend.
How do you figure that there's intelligence in DNA? There's information, but information is not the same thing as intelligence.
And you're telling me you want me to believe in a Big Bang?
Nobody cares what you believe. You are perfectly at liberty to ignore the facts.
And yet, there's almost 8 billion people live on the face of this planet as we speak, but no one's fingerprint is the same as the other.
Right.
That's not a fluke.
Why not? That sounds exactly like a fluke. If every single person's fingerprint were the same, that would be much harder to believe is a fluke. If everyone's fingerprints were the same, that would be pretty strong evidence that there is some determining factor forcing all the fingerprints to be the same. Every fingerprint being different makes it seem much more like fingerprints are shaped very chaotically.
That is a deliberate and intelligent creation
Randomness is evidence of deliberate, intelligent creation?
by this intelligent being whom we as Christians believe and claim to be God. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That is the cause of creation, not just an explosion on its own.
The Big Bang Theory does not claim that the Big Bang created anything.
And even though there was an explosion, what caused the explosion? Who caused the explosion? And who controlled the explosion?
The universe is still exploding. There was never a time when the universe wasn't exploding. Newton discovered that motion only requires a cause if the thing that's moving was once at rest. The universe was never at rest, so its expansion does not need a cause.
I'm not a scientist, but let me say this as well. The scientists claim that when the explosion happened, there was an immense heat. Because anything explodes, there is heat being released. So everything was heated up. So everything expanded, and when the universe cooled down, contracted.
No, the universe never contracted, it's always expanded.
One scientist only spoke about the expansion and the contraction element, not the whole universe. He said, let's just look at this point, expansion and contraction. Who said to the universe when the explosion happened, who said, how fast should you expand? Or how slow? And how fast or how slow should you contract?
It didn't contract, and why would anyone need to specify these things? Why can't the elasticity of space be inherent to it? Why does it need to be externally imposed?
He said, if the expansion or the contraction, he took it down to the nanosecond. He said, a nanosecond, by the way, is the speed of light passing a strand of hair. That is called a nanosecond.
If you're talking about the width of a hair, that would take less than a picosecond. It would be less than 1,000th of a nanosecond. If you're talking about the length of a hair, that would be a pretty arbitrary measure given that the length of a hair can vary by quite a bit.
Light travels 300 kilometers. I don't know how many miles that is. I do it the Australian way. Please excuse me. But it travels 300,000 kilometers a second. That's the speed of light. 300,000 kilometers a second. That's probably, I don't know, close to 200,000 miles a second. Imagine a speed traveling at this enormous pace, passing a strand of hair. That's called a nanosecond. Look at the perfection of God. He said if that expansion and contraction was faster a nanosecond or slower a nanosecond, life wouldn't have existed.
Why not? Does your allegedly all-powerful God not have the power to put life into a universe with a different rate of expansion? And what reason do we have to believe that this expansion rate was ever free to vary? Folks who use this argument seem to just assume that the parameters of the universe are just as likely to have had any other value that they can imagine. This assumption is baseless. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.